The world of entertainment rarely sees a fall as steep and sudden as that of Elvis Presley's trusted bodyguards, Red West and Sonny West. These two had been Elvis's rock-solid shields for over 2 decades, always a step ahead, protecting their iconic boss from threats both seen and unseen. But then came the day that would shatter their world and change the narrative of one of the biggest stars in history. It began with a simple decision that Elvis would later regret deeply: letting go of Red and Sonny. Even those close to Elvis would later describe this moment as a turning point, a moment that would echo through the halls of Graceland and beyond. On a day that felt ordinary yet was anything but, Elvis made the decision to fire Red and Sonny. This wasn't just a termination of employment, it was a personal betrayal. Red, who had stood by Elvis through thick and thin, had even been there when Elvis first stepped into the spotlight. "Even coolies get 2 weeks' notice," Red would later say, his voice laced with bitterness. The phrase cut deep, highlighting the stark contrast between the loyalty Red and Sonny felt for Elvis and the cold reality of being discarded like trash. The news of their firing spread like wildfire, but Elvis tried to brush it off. To the public, he maintained a facade of indifference. However, behind closed doors, doubts and fears gnawed at him. He worried about what Red and Sonny might write in the book they planned to publish about their time with him. The thought of secrets spilling out into the public domain was a nightmare Elvis couldn't shake. Elvis's initial attempt to placate Red and Sonny backfired spectacularly. When he called Red trying to explain away the rushed firing, the conversation took an unexpected turn. Red, though initially open to hearing Elvis's side, quickly shifted the focus to the real issue: the book. "We're all broke," Red said, his voice tinged with the pain of selling everything he owned, including his home. Elvis was taken aback, not just by Red's revelations but by the depth of their shared loss. "It was just a bad time by all," Elvis attempted to rationalize, but the words felt hollow. Red shared more than just financial struggles. He spoke of the emotional toll of feeling abandoned. Elvis's defensive posture crumbled under the weight of his friend's words. "You hurt me and my family very bad," Red said, striking a chord deep within Elvis. The conversation revealed a rift that went beyond professional boundaries. Elvis, ever the self-assured performer, found himself on the defensive, claiming he was in better health than ever, but Red saw through the facade. "You worried about me so much that you tried to hurt me," Red accused. Elvis snapped back, but the exchange left both men feeling raw and exposed. Unbeknownst to Elvis, their fragile reconciliation was about to be shattered once more. Red, feeling cornered and desperate, agreed to an interview where he and Sonny would share their side of the story. Unaware that this conversation would be recorded and later leaked to the media, Elvis engaged in a discussion that would haunt him for years to come. The recorded conversation revealed Elvis's attempts to downplay his drug use and the pressures that led to his downfall. But the most damaging part came when Elvis casually mentioned trying to buy Red and Sonny off with $150,000 to write a book that would, in essence, be a hit piece on him. The revelation was a bombshell, turning Elvis's private struggles into public fodder. As the fallout continued, Elvis turned to music as a solace, but even the creative process was marred by his turmoil. In a series of recording sessions at Graceland, Elvis tackled songs that reflected his inner turmoil. "Way Down" and "He'll Have to Go" captured the essence of his feelings: lost love, regret, and the inability to return to a simpler time. Yet even as he sang about heartache, Elvis couldn't shake the fear of what the truth would bring. The songs he recorded during this period were a mix of nostalgic R&B and somber ballads, each note echoing the pain and regret he felt. But the music, while powerful, couldn't mask the reality of his situation. Elvis was trapped in a cycle of worry and creativity, unable to escape the shadows of his past mistakes. As the dust settled and the world digested the revelations about Elvis, one thing was clear: the king was far from defeated. Despite the betrayal and the public scrutiny, Elvis knew he had to keep moving. The recording sessions continued, and though the music was infused with a deeper sense of loss, it also held a glimmer of hope. Elvis was determined to reclaim his narrative, to show the world that even in the darkest moments, there was always a way forward. For Red and Sonny, the road ahead was equally challenging. They had to come to terms with their own betrayal and the harsh realities of the public eye. But in their shared experience, they found a bond that remained unbroken. As Elvis returned to the stage, both men knew that while the past could never be changed, they could still find a way to heal and move on. In the whirlwind of Elvis's life in 1976, his relationship with Linda was becoming increasingly strained. For months, Linda had been trying to navigate the tumultuous waters of being with someone as famous and troubled as Elvis. While she loved him, she often found herself at odds, especially when it came to his constant attention towards other women. Elvis would often deny having any relationships outside of Linda, but it was hard to ignore the pattern. Elvis wasn't obsessed with women in the traditional sense. Instead, his behavior seemed rooted in a frozen state of mind, stuck in the excitement and innocence of his early fame. To him, being with young, pretty women felt like reliving those carefree days right after he became a star. Despite this, Linda knew she wasn't the only one capturing his attention. One evening, an old friend of Elvis's, George Klein, invited his sister Terry and her friend Ginger Alden, a local beauty queen and assistant in a dress shop, to visit Graceland. Ginger, 20 years old and full of life, tagged along with her sister and cousin Rosemary. Unbeknownst to them, Elvis was watching their arrival through a closed-circuit TV system from his bedroom. After a tour of the house by Charlie Hodge, the girls were called up to Elvis's office. There, Elvis made his choice, Ginger. As the other sisters left, Ginger followed Elvis to his bedroom. Contrary to what she might have expected, Elvis didn't immediately pursue anything physical. Instead, he pulled out a book of numbers and asked for her birth date. Using this, he determined her personality traits according to the book, calling himself a misunderstood and lonely person, while Ginger was seen as loyal and sensitive. Over the next few days, Elvis continued to court Ginger. He sent George Klein to pick her up, taking her on a lavish trip to Las Vegas. It was a trip filled with extravagance, from the luxurious hotel room to the vitamin shots at Dr. Gainham's office. Elvis even gave Ginger a gold bracelet with diamonds mid-flight. Despite her excitement, Ginger's visit was brief. Elvis had other plans, and just a day after arriving in Vegas, they flew back to Memphis. Linda had been with Elvis for 4.5 years by this point. To the outside world, she was both his girlfriend and his caretaker. She had grown used to the unusual schedule, often sleeping during the day and staying up all night. Her life with Elvis had lost its initial excitement, turning into a monotonous routine. She had even moved into her own apartment in Los Angeles, hoping to start an acting career away from the spotlight. But Linda's life wasn't just about her feelings for Elvis. She had begun seeing David Briggs, a pianist who had worked on several of Elvis's recordings. This new relationship added another layer to the complexity of her life with Elvis. It seemed that no matter how much she tried to focus on her own life, Elvis's presence loomed large. As Ginger settled into her new role, Elvis's attention began to shift once more. Just as he was starting to get to know Ginger, Linda returned from a tour, signaling the beginning of another chapter in this ongoing saga of love, loyalty, and complex relationships. As time went on, Elvis's relationship with Ginger became more complicated. He was deeply infatuated with the young woman, but she was much younger and wanted more freedom than he was willing to give. Elvis tried to keep her by his side all the time, showering her with gifts and trying to change her normal life. But Ginger couldn't be happy in a world that was so far from her own. Elvis's behavior was often unpredictable. He would be loving one moment and angry the next. Once, when Ginger didn't bring him yogurt quickly enough, he fired a bullet into the wall above their bed. It was a scary moment, but he apologized later. Still, Ginger could see that she could never fully satisfy him. He needed someone who would put his desires before her own, something Ginger just couldn't do. Despite his problems, Elvis continued to tour. He wanted to keep performing, even as his health worsened. His voice was slurred, his movements clumsy, but fans still came in large numbers. They seemed to want to see him, even if they knew he was struggling. Ginger tried to be there for Elvis, but it was hard. She missed her family and friends, and the constant travel was tough on her. There were moments when Elvis would pull her into his world completely, like when they toured together in the southeastern states. But when she got homesick and asked to go back, he had her family join them instead. Elvis's will was a secret, known only to a few. It named Lisa Marie as his sole heir, leaving everything to her when she turned 25. This meant Ginger would get nothing, despite being his girlfriend at the time. It showed how much Elvis truly cared about Ginger, or rather, how little. In the hot summer of 1977, Elvis kept performing despite being very sick. He looked very different, fat and drugged, his speech slurry. People wrote bad reviews, but fans still showed up. They loved him even if they could see he wasn't well. When Ginger was with him, Elvis tried his best, but without her, he was lost. During one show in Baton Rouge, he was so out of it that he couldn't perform. He was flown back home to the hospital, and the rest of the tour was canceled. After this, Elvis didn't want to rest. He felt responsible for his employees, even though they were worried about him. He refused to take time off, saying he had to think of them. Elvis Presley was a complex man, full of contradictions. He was a talented artist who struggled with personal demons. His relationships were tumultuous, and his health issues grew worse with time. But through it all, his fans remained loyal, showing up to see him perform, hoping against hope that he would be the Elvis they remembered. As his life came to an end, the world mourned the loss of a legend, a man who had given so much to entertain and inspire others.